A lot of crazy things happen in Naruto that can change the history of the shinobi world forever, whether it be something massive like Kaguya coming down to Earth, or something seemingly more obscure like Mizuki manipulating Naruto into thinking he's on his side. The entire story can be fundamentally changed with one simple tweak in the timeline. So, in this video, we'll be taking a look into what would happen if we change one of the key details of the story. More specifically, today, we'll be exploring and breaking down what would happen if Kakashi joined the Akatsuki. Before we begin massively altering the timeline though, for more Naruto discussions and what-ifs like this, feel free to like and subscribe. Also make sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss out when new content drops. But without any further ado, let's hop into the video. So you may be asking, Sage, how in the world do we make one small tweak in the story and have Kakashi end up in the Akatsuki? I understand that it sounds crazy, but I believe I've crafted a possible alternate timeline that A, mostly makes sense, and B, is super interesting. So take a ride with me as we travel back in time to the Third Great Shinobi War, during the Kanabi Bridge mission. This is where our story begins. So everything is going as it did in the original timeline. You know, all the bickering is going on between Obito and Kakashi. Kakashi decides that they shouldn't go back to save Rin because of the shinobi code. Obito says he should. Kakashi ends up following him back, saves his life, loses his eye. But then later on, Obito returns the favor by saving Kakashi's life, pushing him out of the way of the falling boulder. And in the original storyline, Obito somehow survives this. We don't know if it's because his Mangekyo awoke and he somehow phased through it or what, but his eye survived and the right side of his body, while crushed, wasn't completely lost. But what if that wasn't the case? What if Obito actually died? Since in this timeline, Obito actually dies, Madara is never able to save his life and make him become his heir. But we do know that he's looking for an heir. We know that he is hooked up to the God Tree in hopes that he's able to pass down his plan to somebody who can bring him back. So, what if Obito's not there? Is there someone else that he may go after? I believe yes, and I believe that this someone might just be Kakashi. No, he's not an Uchiha, but he does have the power of the Sharingan now, and he's incredibly talented. And also, Madara doesn't have a ton of options. So here's how I see this playing out. Obito dies, they go back, they mourn him, all of this stuff happens, and then Madara sees, through Zetsu, that Kakashi is spiraling. That this young prodigy, this kid who has already become a Jonin by 9 years old and now possesses the power of the Sharingan, is slowly falling into darkness. And Madara knows that sometimes people in that position just need a little push in the right direction. And so he gives Kakashi a push. He sets up the exact same mission he set up before. Kakashi has to come save Rin. But she sacrifices herself by jumping in front of his Chidori. This causes Kakashi's Mangekyo to awaken, and Kakashi falls, passed out, because he can't handle the chakra. Then he wakes up in Madara's cave. Upon waking, Kakashi is confronted by Madara. Madara tells him that he saved his life from all of the Anbu closing in around him, and that Rin is dead. He then presents him with the Infinite Tsukiyomi plan, and tells him exactly why he saved him. Kakashi is obviously hesitant because Kakashi is a shinobi, he's dutiful, but right now, he just saw his best friend die 6 months ago, and then he saw his lover die a day ago. So Kakashi is conflicted and in pain and searching for answers, and this man is telling him that he can create a world without war, nothing but peace, and a world where Rin and Obito still exist. Madara tells him that it's not Kakashi's fault that all of these things happened, that there are other people who are to blame, and then even more than that, it's the greater schemes of the world, it's this cycle of hatred, it's how the world works, and in order for the world to stop working this way, in order for there to stop being pain and suffering, somebody has to save the world by putting it under the Infinite Tsukiyomi. He offers salvation to a boy who is in pain, and Kakashi takes the deal. But Madara is well aware that Kakashi is not an Uchiha. Kakashi may not be able to handle the Sharingan to the degree that he needs to in order to carry on Madara's namesake. And if this plan is going to work, he has to convince everyone that he's Madara. So Madara gives him a little bit of an amp. Madara gives him Hashirama cells. You see, Kakashi on his own, with just his Hatake DNA, wouldn't be able to A, use the Mangekyo efficiently at this point in time without a significant boost, or B, carry out Madara's plan under Madara's name convincingly, because, well, it's Madara. And, Madara's no fool, so he would offer him this buff in order to accomplish his plans. And this would significantly amp Kakashi. Not only would he gain access to Wood Style and significantly better stamina overall, but his Mangekyo Sharingan wouldn't go blind. Obito used his Mangekyo Sharingan consistently throughout the series, with Kamui even working passively, so you would think that if overuse of the MS leads to blindness, then he would have went blind a long time ago, but because he had a significant amount of Hashirama cells in his body, the regenerative capabilities are probably what allowed him to not go blind. So the same thing would be applied here to Kakashi. But not only that, whenever you add Senju Chakra to your body and you're using an ocular jutsu, it increases the potency of the jutsu as well. So if you see how good Kakashi was with the Kamui during the war arc, let's just say that's gonna be way better as well. But obviously, starting out, Kakashi wouldn't get all the way to War Arc level, but he'd get somewhere close. We see Obito whenever he gets, the Zetsu cells, and he's able to fight all of these Anbu with his Mangekyo. He's already pretty good at using the Kamui, but obviously he gets more proficient with time. So we're just going to assume that Kakashi gets to essentially Pain Arc or maybe even War Arc levels, early War Arc levels of Kamui use, just by getting the Hashirama cells. So, after leaving Kakashi with this significant amp, Madara unplugs from the Geromazo and dies. He already gave Kakashi all of the steps that he needed to accomplish this plan, just like he did with Obito. So, with this information in hand, Kakashi decides to kill Black Zetsu. Now, Obito is no fool, but Obito is consistently shown to not be as smart or tactical or talented as Kakashi, especially early on. So, if you think that Obito was able to see through Madara's deception and wanted to take these plans into his own hands, but Kakashi wouldn't, you're just missing something. I also think that he wouldn't just see through it the same way Obito did. I think he would see through it even more. And why would he allow for Black Zetsu, the incarnation of Madara's will, according to what Madara told him, to just walk around? This would be a terrible idea, so I believe Kakashi would kill him. Since Kakashi is smart again, he would still extract all the information that he felt necessary out of Black Zetsu before killing him. So he would know about Nagato getting the Rinnegan and how the Rinnegan is necessary to become the Jubi Jinchuriki and all of these things. So he would know all of the steps laid out, he would get everything he needed from him, and then he would probably just Kamui him away. So Kakashi kills Zetsu and then moves on with the plan, and just like in the original storyline where Obito began to groom Nagato to form the Akatsuki, Kakashi would do the same. A lot of people have asked the question, why in the world didn't Obito just carry out the plan himself? And well, that's a good question, but you do need a team of a bunch of S-class shinobi to extract the Bijou chakra from these Jinchuriki, so that's probably why. So Kakashi would see that as well, and he would want to form his own team. So the Akatsuki begins to form. They start going around, taking all these missions, and sort of working under Kakashi's leadership, but with Pain as the de facto leader and Kakashi working behind the scenes, much like Obito did. And while all of this is going on, Kakashi still attacks Konoha to capture Kurama. So Kakashi arrives in Konoha. Now, keep in mind, Kakashi has been sort of brainwashed by Madara to believing that this world of peace can only come through the infinite Tsukiyomi, but also that this isn't his fault, that there are other people to blame. So, for the deaths of Rin and Obito, the two people that he's probably closest with, Kakashi blames Minato. Minato is the fastest man alive, but he didn't show up. He was always late. And it's his fault that Rin and Obito died. Because who was Kakashi? Kakashi was a 9-year-old, 10-year-old kid. How can he be expected to save them? Minato should have been there. So, en route to capturing Kurama, Kakashi also went to send a message. And I think he would be more successful than Obito was in that regard. You see, like I said, Kakashi is smarter than Obito. He always has been. He's always been more talented as well. So if you give him the Hashirama Cell Amp as well, I think he gets even stronger than Obito was. So when Kakashi shows up to Konoha, he could easily, from a distance, just snipe Minato's head off with his Kamui and then get him out of the way, but I think he wants to send a message. So he appears, and at this point in time, because his Kamui is amped, much like in the War Arc, he's actually able to teleport in and out of Kamui himself. So Kakashi is also able to spawn himself into different locations, like what Obito did, or like what he did whenever he came out of the Kamui dimension on top of Obito in the War Arc. So Kakashi spawns himself inside of the room where Kushina is preparing to give birth to Naruto. And after she gives birth, Kakashi takes Naruto, places the paper tags on him, does the same exact thing that Obito did to separate Kushina from Minato. Then whenever he separates them, Kakashi teleports her into the Kamui dimension with himself, and then spits her out of the Kamui dimension at the exact spot that Obito did in order to extract Kurama from her. He's successful in extracting Kurama. He puts Kurama under Genjutsu and begins to control him as he wreaks havoc on the village. Minato, just like in the original timeline, fights Kurama. He teleports away the Bijou Bomb, all that stuff. And then Kakashi attempts to warp him away. But Minato teleports out of it, and Kakashi says, just like Obito did, next time I'll put more chakra into it. They begin to clash, but in this clash, because Kakashi is more talented than Obito was, and now he's amped by Hashirama cells, he should be able to slightly get the better of Minato, or at least compete on par with him. Now, he can't phase through him, but also Kakashi probably doesn't want Minato to know, or anybody that may be watching to know that he's Kakashi. He wants them to think that he's Madara. So he's not going to use his Chidori, but he might use the Rasengan. You see, Kakashi already knew how to use the Rasengan because he failed in applying lightning nature to it, and that's how he ended up just inventing the Chidori. So I think that Kakashi would sort of make a mockery of Minato by using his own jutsu against him. I believe that maybe Minato pulls out the Rasengan earlier on in the fight, Kakashi's able to snipe it away with the Kamui, and then he says, I like that jutsu. How about I return it back to you? So he forms his own Rasengan. Now this would kind of fall into the area of Minato being able to believe that Madara could copy his ninjutsu, so it would make sense in his head as well, covering Kakashi's tracks. So Kakashi loads up a Hashirama Cell amped Rasengan, while Minato loads up a Sage amped Rasengan, because he would notice that whenever this guy is trying to warp him away, he needs a little bit of precognition. He needs to know sort of what's going on. And he would go into Sage mode, load up his attack, they would charge at each other. They would connect their Rasengans, and both of them would lose their arms. But it wouldn't be Kakashi's own arm. You see, Kakashi, in pursuit of this great power and trying to fulfill this plan, I think he would have replaced at least more than one of his limbs entirely with white Zetsu cells. This would allow for his stamina and his overall physical abilities, along with his overall ocular power, to be increased even more. And this version of Kakashi would be just seeking the best way to accomplish this plan in the quickest and most efficient way possible. So yes, he loses his arm, but it can easily be replaced. Minato, on the other hand, is bleeding out. But in true Minato fashion, as his arm is evaporated off of his body along with Kakashi's, he uses his other hand to place an FTG tag on Kakashi's body. And then whenever the chaos sort of quiets down, they separate from one another, the smoke begins to clear, he teleports to him, places his hand on his chest, and severs the contract seal between Kakashi and Kurama. Kakashi would have failed his mission, but he would have accomplished at least one of his goals. You see, Minato bleeding out is going to be something that Kakashi relishes in. Kakashi blames Minato for everything bad that has happened over the last several years, and he wants him to know. Kakashi is one of the best trash talkers in the entire series, and I think with him being in the mental state he is here, he would remove his mask and reveal to his sensei who he is. Of course, after making sure that nobody else is around. Minato would say, I thought that you were captured, taken by the hidden mist whenever Rin died, and Kakashi would reveal to him everything that's happened, and the plan that he has, and how it's all Minato's fault. And then he would cover his hand in lightning and plunge it through his dazed sensei's chest. Minato would be conflicted over everything that's going on, and it would slow his reaction time. Much like he was dazed in the war and unable to perform at full power, the same thing would happen here. Minato would die. With Minato dead and Kurama rampaging through the village, I think that Kakashi would leave, because he now has no control over Kurama and he needs to replace his arm. So Kakashi warps himself into the Kamui dimension and disappears. But the Hidden Leaf Village is still dealing with a 50-story demon fox rampaging in the village, and Hiruzen cannot handle it himself. Minato is not showing up, and who else is going to help him out? So Hiruzen calls Fugaku. In the original timeline, the Uchiha intentionally stayed away because they didn't want to be blamed for what was going on, but Hiruzen would recognize that he needs the power of a Sharingan to come quell this beast, so Fugaku shows up, activates his Mangekyo, and tames the nine-tailed fox. With the Nine Tails under Fugaku's control and Kushina still alive because of her Uzumaki genes, they just reseal Kurama back into Kushina. So Minato dies, Kushina lives, still the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, and Naruto lives. But this is where things begin to get a bit weird. We'll come back to Kakashi's story in a bit, but now after severing every single tie he has to his past, Kakashi is fully plunged into darkness and fully committed to bringing this plan to fruition. With Minato dead, the village needs a new Hokage, and Hiruzen has already stepped down, and so he doesn't really want to step back in unless absolutely necessary. The Sannin are nowhere to be found in the village because they're Orochimaru's in the Akatsuki already, Jiraiya's off doing research, and Tsunade is afraid of blood. So, the natural selection is Fugaku. Upon the recommendation of Kushina and Hiruzen for quelling the beast and saving the village, Fugaku becomes the first Uchiha Hokage. Danzo, of course, fights against this, claiming that maybe Fugaku and the Uchiha work together with this Madara in order to claim power, because if he quells the nine-tailed beast after this other Uchiha works with him to get the nine-tailed beast into the village, then he looks like a hero, and suddenly the Uchiha have power. But Hiruzen says that's not the case. He saw what happened, and that couldn't be true. So Fugaku does step into power, and now a new era in the Hidden Leaf has begun. Because Fugaku is now Hokage and an Uchiha not only leads the village but also saves the village, I believe this means the Uchiha massacre is avoided. The military strength of Konoha at this point in time is arguably higher than it's ever been, and so there's peace throughout Konoha for years and years. But Danzo would see the Uchiha being in power as a threat, as a bad thing. He's unable to control things behind the scenes if Hiruzen isn't giving him the pass to do so, so he'd try to formulate a way to remove Fugaku from power. He'd work with Orochimaru and the budding Akatsuki for a few years to get a Hashirama Cell arm and formulate a plan to bring down Shisui, but there wouldn't be a bunch of Uchiha Sharingan laying around, so he wouldn't get access to the Izanagi. He would get a significant amp in his overall abilities, though. So Danzo, being Danzo, would still eventually try to attempt to take Shisui's Sharingan, because if Danzo was able to get his eye, he'd be able to use the Kodo Matsukami on Fugaku, convincing him to do something horrible that would then tarnish the Uchiha name and allow for a power vacuum to be created for him to step in. Because if Fugaku does something detrimental to the village, then Danzo was right the whole time. They shouldn't have trusted this Uchiha scum, so Danzo does go after Shisui. Danzo employs some of his Anbu or root members to help him out in this, and so Shisui is still poisoned, he's still taken off guard, and still loses his eye. And since he knows that because he's poisoned he's going to die, he reaches out to Itachi. They meet at the same cliff, he tells him the same things, aside from the Uchiha-ku, and he dies. But Itachi awakens his Mangekyo Sharingan, and now that he knows that Danzo is after his father, he immediately goes to find Fugaku. Itachi bursts into the door of the Hokage office to warn his father about what Danzo is doing, but Danzo is already there. Fugaku is already under his control. But Itachi gets Fugaku out of the Genjutsu. Why? Because Kodo Matsukami is super strong, right? Well, yes, but the powerful thing about Kodo Matsukami is you don't know that your thoughts are being influenced by the Genjutsu. But as soon as you do know, and somebody's able to disturb your chakra, you can be broken out of it. So Itachi uses his own genjutsu against Fugaku to break him out of the Kodo Amatsukami. Fugaku, realizing that Danzo had used Shisui's Mangekyo ability against him, sees that his son is telling the truth and squares off against Danzo. Danzo was like an animal backed into a corner. He realizes there's no way to get out of this but to fight and fight viciously, so he tries to take down everyone all together. Danzo activates the reverse four symbol ceiling, and simultaneously Fugaku activates his Susanoo. He pushes his son out of the way to save his life, but he and Danzo are both sealed away. On this day, the Hokage dies, saving his son and the village. The Hidden Leaf Village has now lost 2 Hokage in the span of just a few short years. They need stability, so Hiruzen steps back in. But in order to prevent an all-out outrage in the village and maybe a civil war between the Uchiha and the Hidden Leaf, Danzo's involvement in Shisui's death is kept quiet. But the route is shut down, and Hiruzen ends up reaching out to Jiraiya to investigate the organization that helped Danzo to get his Hashirama Cell arm, which Jiraiya would have already been doing, between other research, of course. Now that Hiruzen is back in power, he would be able to work to stabilize the village. Under Fugaku's reign, the Uchiha police force would have been brought into the village and not further pushed out like it was with Tobirama, so they would be an integrated part of society. Now, they would miss their leader, but naturally, some of the other Uchiha would step up and everything would be going well. But Itachi would be suffering. By this point, Itachi is very clearly going to be a Jonin, and now he's got an MS, but he's been through so much trauma, he probably doesn't need to be out in the field, so Hiruzen encourages him to take a little bit of a break. So he takes some time off, and then eventually comes back to Hiruzen and says he thinks he's ready to get back in the field, but Hiruzen wants to ease him back in. So Hiruzen puts him in charge of his own team. Team 7. With Itachi in charge of Team 7, they'd obviously start off going on some pretty basic missions, and this would allow for Itachi to get back into the field and kind of work himself back into things in a safe way that would allow for him not to get completely overwhelmed like cold-blooded Kakashi did whenever he stepped into the Yanbu. But he would also get to spend more time with his brother. See, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura would still be placed on Team 7, and with Itachi as their leader, Sasuke's Sharingan prowess would probably be even better. He would learn to evolve the Tomo even faster, I believe. Sasuke's fire style would also improve, and he would learn how to use clones and crows in order to integrate them into combat, much like Itachi does. But he wouldn't learn the Chidori. Naruto would end up learning the Uzumaki sealing techniques because, well, his mother is still alive in this timeline, as well as the FTG from Genma. We know that Minato taught his Hokage Guard Squad how to use the FTG, but they couldn't use it as proficiently as him, because it takes quite a bit of chakra to use it, and you kind of have to be a genius. But because Naruto does pick up on things very quickly, and because in this timeline, he will have been raised under a shinobi household, had a significant amount of training, and not have an uneven tetragram seal on his chest, suppressing Ninetales chakra, I believe he'd catch on really quick, and he'd probably even be considered a genius. He wouldn't know the Rasengan yet, of course, but he'd be incredibly deadly and way more popular. He and Sasuke would bond even more as well because they could relate to one another from the death of their fathers. And Sakura, of course, would become a Genjutsu master under the Genjutsu master because her chakra control is naturally super high, but I believe that Itachi would also probably focus a little bit on developing her fundamentals more so than Kakashi did. From here, things proceed basically as normal. I don't believe Itachi would have any trouble with Zabuza or any of the other missions they went on, and they would eventually be able to take the Chunin exams, Team 7. Kakashi allowed for them to take it in the first year, so I don't really see why Itachi wouldn't also. And in this timeline, they'd probably be stronger, so they'd all do incredibly well. Their matchups are all the same, and they do even better than they did before. They all make the final round, with Sasuke and Naruto being the biggest prodigies alongside Neji and Gaara. Sakura would win her match versus Ino via Genjutsu, so she'd move on to the final round as well. And then Jiraiya would arrive in the village just before to train Naruto, while Itachi trained Sasuke to evolve his Sharingan into a 3-tomo and work on his overall abilities, and Sakura is stuck training by herself again. I don't know who would help her out. But during the Chunin exams, although they would be going swimmingly for Team 7, Konoha Crush would still go down, but this time, it's not just Orochimaru and the Sand. The Sound Village was never started because Orochimaru stayed in the Akatsuki, since Itachi never joined and, bullied him out of it, but since Kakashi is more tactical than Obito, and without, obviously, Itachi in the Akatsuki, Kakashi would have no reason to stay away from Konoha like Obito did. So, fair warning, this is where this gets pretty dark. Like I've said a few times, Kakashi has always been more tactical than Obito, and Kakashi will have already, at this point in time, been a Jonin for a little bit before being taken in by Madara, so he will have led platoons of men, he will have led his own teams, he will have seen war, and then with Madara brainwashing him, making him plummet into the dark side, Kakashi would be more ruthless and battle-hardened than Obito ever was at this point. So I think Kakashi sends everyone. We see Kakashi in the Fourth War command the entire platoon that he was in and put together one heck of a plan to take down the 7 ninja swordsmen. It's super effective. He knows how to use everybody's abilities to the best of their ability in order to accomplish the goal. And I think this Kakashi would be no different. So he would send every member of the Akatsuki to make sure that there is no chance that they don't get the Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki. And whenever they go to assault the village, I don't really think that it would be close. I mean, Pain by himself was able to decimate the village with no problem. Now, I will say, the Hidden Leaf does have the Uchiha police force at this point in time, but they're no match for Pain and Kisame and Orochimaru, Sasori, all of these people coming together to take them down. So, the Hidden Leaf falls. I will say, there is a chance that the Hidden Leaf does survive this, but it's only in the event that Guy goes into the 8th gate and all of the Akatsuki are right next to one another. If that doesn't happen, I don't think that they survive this. I do think that we'd see some pretty cool fights with, the Uchiha police force facing off against Kakuzu and Hidan, some of the Jonin like Asuma and Kurenai facing off against some of the heavy hitters, Pain just demolishing the village, Orochimaru moving through with his snake summons, encountering Jiraiya, and Itachi going through and taking down the likes of maybe Sasori, But at the end of the day, this is going to be way too much. So, Konoha falls, and this story is no longer called Naruto, because now that Naruto and Sasuke are Chunin, they would be fighting against these Akatsuki forces. They would not be in the horde of children and women that are being taken underground to the, survival bunker. So, Naruto and Sasuke die. Kushina dies because she gets the Nine-Tails extracted from her. Jiraiya dies because he's not going to be able to take down enough Akatsuki members for, to really make a difference. Guy ends up dying even if he doesn't use the 8th gate. And Konoha is no longer on the map. I also think that because Orochimaru did request to be able to take an Uchiha body, that whoever brings down Itachi probably keeps him alive long enough for Orochimaru to take him over. So I do think in this timeline, Orochimaru gets Itachi's body. So even though they may lose a few members in the assault on Konoha, maybe, Kakuzu, Hidan, maybe even Sasori, they would actually come out of it way stronger because Orochimaru would now have the Tsukiyomi along with the Amaterasu and the Susanoo, the Totsuka, all of that stuff. Orochimaru would be busted at this point in time, and I do think that would pose a little bit of a threat to Kakashi, but because his Kamui is so amped, he should still be comfortable dealing with him. But that being said, I think this is the point where we kind of reach a bit of a crossroads too. You see, Orochimaru has achieved his goal. He's gotten the power that he has always wanted. He's able to combat pretty much everybody. And I think that it's at this point in time, he might challenge Pain for leadership. Because again, remember, nobody knows that Kakashi is actually pulling the strings from behind the scenes. And now the Akatsuki, if we assume that Kakuzu, Hidan, and Sasori all die in the assault on Konoha, the Akatsuki is made up of Pain, Konan, Kisame, and Orochimaru, with Kakashi pulling strings from behind the scenes. Maybe they bring in Deidara in order to, replenish some of the forces that they lost. But at this point in time, Orochimaru would probably see Pain and think, I can take that guy. But I don't think he'd be able to. And also, I think if he tried to take out Pain, unless it was in front of all of the other Akatsuki members, I think that Kakashi would probably help Pain. Because he knows that Orochimaru is a bit of a loose cannon, and Pain is following his instructions because Pain believes the story that he's told him about how he's going to try to bring peace and balance to the world by bringing in all of the Bijou. This is also why Konoha wouldn't just be totally wiped out. I think that the Akatsuki would wipe out most of their military forces, but would leave the women and children alive so that there will still be a way to tell Pain, like, we're not just decimating the entire world, we're actually going to have people here that can live peacefully. So I do think regardless of what happens, if Orochimaru faces off against Pain, he still is going to lose, whether it's Pain beating him or it's Kakashi and Pain beating him. So let's assume that Orochimaru dies, and now the team consists of Kakashi behind the scenes pulling the strings, Zetsu working as sort of their intel guy, White Zetsu of course, Black Zetsu is dead, and then we have two teams consisting of Pain and Konan, and then Deidara and Kisame. I think this is probably more than enough to go village by village, decimating everyone. And if not, I do think that there are probably plenty of S-class criminals out there that they could bring in, but let's just assume this is the team. So next, I think Kakashi would be smart enough to realize that if Konoha and the Hidden Cloud fall, the rest of the, five great nations have literally no chance. So I think they go to the Cloud next. With that being said, I think honestly Pain might be enough, and if not Pain and Kisame definitely would be. So if you send in Pain, Konan, Kisame, and Deidara to go in there and take them out, there's just nothing they could do. We could maybe assume that one of them dies. I think the weakest of them obviously is Konan, so let's just assume that Konan dies. Now, I do think that this would cause Nagato to have some reservations, but I also think that maybe this would encourage him to really bring peace to the world because he will have experienced more pain. So Konan dies, so now we have a 4 or 5 man unit of Kakashi, Zetsu, Pain, Kisame, and Deidara. And remember, the Hidden Cloud has 2 Jinchuriki. They've got the 8 tails and the 2 tails. So now the Akatsuki have possession of the 9 tails, the 8 tails, the 2 tails, and the 1 tail. So I think you guys know that from here on, it's pretty easy. They go to the Hidden Stone, decimate them, then they go to the Hidden Waterfall, decimate them, and at this point in time, it's all but over. But I do think that this poses an interesting question. If Kakashi wants to become the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails in order to bring about the infinite Tsukiyomi, but now he's got all of these really powerful shinobi around him that have assembled all of these tailed beasts, and they are ruling the world with fear, how in the world is he going to accomplish that? Of course, the Akatsuki are in power. There is no one to stand against them, but where does Kakashi go from here? Well, this is also where I think his ruthless, tactical mind probably plays in his favor. I think it's at this point that Kakashi would reveal himself as the true leader of the Akatsuki, and maybe Pain will have already suspected that he had his own plans and sort of wasn't really on his side the whole time, but I also think he knows that he can't defy him. I think that's the only way that he would even follow Kakashi. So at this point in time, Kakashi comes out as the leader, everyone sort of falls in line, and then maybe he says, let's stay in power as the Akatsuki for a while in order to make sure that everything is running smooth. So if there's any rebellions or disturbances, I'll send one of the members of the Akatsuki out to go take care of it. And that is where this part of his plan goes into action. Kakashi tells Deidara, hey, there is a disturbance in the Hidden Mist. I need you to go out there and take care of it. There are people who are rising up and that they need to know that this is not okay. So, sending you out there. So Deidara goes to the Hidden Mist, and he's greeted by people who are not rebelling. He's confused. He's like, what's going on? I thought that Kakashi said, or Madara, I guess, said that something's going on out here. And that's when Kakashi would show up and off guard snipe his head off with Kamui. And this is where his plan begins to unfold. White Zetsu would obviously be their intel guy, so he would report back that Deidara died because he fell from this rebellion that was going on. People are rising up, and some powerful shinobi was able to take him down. So then they would send in Kisame, and off guard, he would get sniped as well. And Zetsu would report back, this is what happened, because remember, Zetsu is on Kakashi's side. He's not on someone else's side, he's been here from the beginning. So Zetsu would continue to carry out Kakashi's plan according to plan. I believe Nagato will have gotten suspicious by this point in time that all of these people are falling every time he sends them out to these missions. So he would probably begin to plan for a way to bring down Kakashi. But ultimately, with Kakashi being amped by Hashirama cells, if you take into account how insane his Kamui was during the war arc, and the fact that it is the better offensive application of the Kamui technique, I don't really think that Pain would have much of a chance. I do think that numbers could kind of pose an issue for Kakashi, because he would essentially probably have to take them down one at a time. Nagato would probably know how his Kamui works, at least to some degree, so he would know that if he spreads out all of his different paths, it could pose an issue for him. But the fact that Kakashi in the war arc, without Hashirama cells, was able to activate and complete Kamui quicker than 8th Gate Guy could move, or he was able to teleport away a full KCM2 Naruto clone moving at full speed, or Rasengan out of KCM1 Naruto's hand while he was moving at full speed, unless you assume that Pain is faster than any of those characters, there's really nothing that he can do. So with all 9 Bijou sealed into the Ghetto Mazo, and Kakashi needing a Rinnegan, I think that Kakashi would probably go after Nagato himself. And once he does that, it's all but over. I don't really think that Pain stands a chance against him. I don't think that Nagato himself stands a chance against him because he's decrepit. So Nagato ends up dying, Kakashi gets the Rinnegan, and from here, it's pretty much over. Either Kakashi absorbs the Ten Tails and becomes the Ten Tails Jinchuriki after struggling a bit to control the chakra, of course, and then from there, there's nobody left to stop him, so he just activates the Infinite Tsukiyomi and wins. He sits down in his garden like Thanos and watches the sunset on a grateful universe. Alternatively, if you don't think that his body, even amped by Hashirama cells, would be able to handle that chakra, then he tries to absorb the Ten Tails, and he dies, he's not able to, and then the Ten Tails rampages, and then Jigen eventually comes out and takes the Ten Tails. So there's no good ending here. I think that, if Kakashi ended up being the one that Madara took under his wing, things would end in a way worse way. At the end of the day, Kakashi is just a smarter, more tactical, more talented version of Obito, with, albeit a lot of people see Obito's version of Kamui as better, and defensively, and maybe overall it is, but in terms of an offensive application, it's definitely not. Kakashi genuinely, at the beginning of this story, instead of fighting Minato, could just snipe him from a distance, and there's probably nothing he could do about it. And I did have an alternate script written out that I thought might be more interesting, but I just don't see a way that this goes much differently than what it went here. So yeah, long story short, if Kakashi ended up being taken in by Madara instead, things end much worse than what they did before. I will say, what happens after all of this Ten Tails stuff is really interesting. I don't want to get into it because it's almost a 40-minute long video already. But basically, if Kakashi becomes a Ten Tails Jinchuriki, or if he's not able to, and Jigen ends up taking the Ten Tails, eventually Momoshiki and Kinshiki are coming back, and I'm really interested to know what would happen there. So let me know what you guys think. Also, let me know what you guys think of the video. If you think that it's just way too crazy, then let me know. But if you guys think that maybe it would have ended faster, then let me know. I did have a couple alternate versions of this script. I just felt like this was probably the most realistic way that it would go down, to be completely honest with you. But if you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you for watching the entire video. I love you. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you liked it, make sure to like it. Also, if you guys like content like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. But thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. Have an awesome day.